And we are back, episode 34 of Journey to a Million. The fantasy football previews continue. And look, we did our positional previews, and now we are going to talk some sleepers today. Not Sleeper, the fantasy football platform, but we do like that. But we are talking just sleepers in fantasy football and how we are really defining these sleepers. We're going to be talking about someone who is being drafted, too late based on ADP, right? And someone people who we think should be drafted higher, basically. And with that group, it's a full Journey to a Million squad. Myself, Drew Skyberg. Jared Vlasky's joining us today. Jared, how you doing?
Doing good.
Zack Roush, also. Zack, how you doing?
Pretty good.
And then we have our guest, Tyler DeVooght, the Valor's weight room supervising legend, is here to join us. Tyler, how are you doing on this Friday morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing great as well. Thank you. And let's go through these sleepers. This is going to be a great episode. Let me tell you, full disclosure, Zack actually guessed one of Jared's sleepers. So there's a little conversation in the group chat.
It was a pretty easy guess.
It was.
An easy guess.
It's not biased at all.
So making up the position, right? So I asked everyone to send their sleepers in ahead of time. I'll tell you how it turned out. So we have one quarterback, two running backs, 4 wide receivers, and 1 tight end. So we basically have a team here. And I'm going to read the 8 sleepers now, and then we're going to do a little conversation. We're going to try to guess who is who, and then we'll let people play some defense and whatnot. So here are your 8 sleepers. First one, Nyheim Hines, Austin Hooper, Devontae Parker, Davis Mills, Christian Kirk, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and then Chase Edmonds. Those are the 8 sleepers us 4 came up with. And to start, Zack, we'll go to you. Is there any of the 8 on that list that you just really hate? I can read the list again, too, if need be.
Yeah, read it one more time.
So, Nyheim Hines, Austin Hooper, Devontae Parker, Davis Mills, Christian Kirk, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and Chase Edmonds.
I'm not a big fan of Olave just because he has a lot of competition. I guess that's the one red flag with him coming in as a rookie. He already has Michael Thomas, Jarvis, who's kind of declining. We really don't know what's going to happen with Michael Thomas, but that's still 2 other receivers. And then if Kamara somehow doesn't get suspended, that's another option. And then I don't think Jameis is proven to be a great quarterback that can support that many receivers and options in one offense.
We'll get more to the Olave thing. We'll get through those. But Jared, Tyler, Jared, we'll go to you. Is there one that surprises you?
I would say out of all those, probably Chase Edmonds. I've expressed it before. I don't like split backs, and it's not that he's a split back, but they just have a crowded backfield in Miami. You got Gaskin, you got Edmonds, you got a lot of players there, and you don't really know who's going to get the touches every game. So I just not too confident with that.
And Tyler, let's hear yours.
Can I hear the list one more time?
Here's the list for you, Tyler. Nyheim Hines, Austin Hooper, Devontae Parker, Davis Mills, Christian Kirk, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, and Chase Edmonds.
Ooh. For me, it's going to be close between both of the ones they said. Chase Edmonds, he's in that timeshare situation in Miami. You don't know who's necessarily going to come out as that starter right now. And with the new head coach in town coming from San Francisco, they ran that offense where it varied each week. So I wouldn't feel confident taking Chase Edmonds, knowing that he might be inconsistent. And then I completely agree with Zack about Olave. I think in Dynasty, he'd be a great stash, but for redraft, I think his ceiling isn't very high this year. Because everything you mentioned, he's got so many other targets around him that I think it's going to be kind of a slow introduction for Olave.
All right, so those are the sleeper ones here, and then I got to choose one I want to hear more about. I want to hear more, Mine's probably Brandon Ayuk here is mine. Because I know Nyheim Hines, which we'll get to. He's actually the first one we'll talk about today. So, Jared, shocker, that is in fact yours. Yes, and sorry, I hate to just say that one right away, but as we could guess, that one was Jared's. We'll go through these 8, and I just have a list, random order. We'll have someone take over and talk about it. So Nyheim Hines is the first one from the Colts, Jared. So let's hear it. Why Nyheim Hines?
So, I mean, besides just the fact that Frank Reich said that he would draft him if he did fantasy football, I just want to say a few things. So, first of all, if you look at the past, I think it was 2018 and 2020. They had Phillip Rivers in 2018, Phillip Rivers in 2020, and then whatever. Anyways, those 2 seasons they had good quarterbacks, and when he did that, Hines had, I think it was 862 yards from scrimmage, and that came in 2020 with 482 of those yards, 63 receptions receptions. So I like where he is right now. Like, he had 7 touchdowns in 2020. Last season was hard to judge because he had Carson Wentz on that team, and it's not really a quarterback you can trust, as we all saw. But I saw this comparison that I wanted to talk about. So they were comparing Nyheim Hines to Cordero Patterson because Patterson was on the Falcons with Matt Ryan. First of all, Matt Ryan used Cordero Patterson as kind of a receiver, and I think that's what he's going to do with Nyheim Hines. So Cordero Patterson right now, if you look, he's listed as a receiver, although we basically know him as a running back. So I think that if Matt Ryan uses Nyheim Hines as a receiver, he could get as high as wide receiver 2 for this team. I think Michael Pittman obviously is number 1, and then he could be 2. I think he beats out Alec Pierce and Paris Campbell. They're not proven. Nyheim Hines, he is a great option for PPR, which we are. And just with Matt Ryan, Cordero Patterson had 52 receptions for 548 yards last year. And that's when he was technically a running back. But Matt Ryan knows how to utilize a kind of like a slot receiver who was a running back. He can work around that. And I think that Nyheim Hines is always that person that can get those little like tosses, like he had like a Tyreek Hill kind of thing and run around the outside, and he's fast and he can make up for the rest of it with his speed. I think that he could be the X factor for this Colts team. And I think that he's a great sleeper, and he's going at his ADP is 121 and he's running back 43, which is a lot higher than people thought. So I think that he could surprise a lot of people this year.
I guess you mentioned wide receiver too. I mean, that's something Zack and I talked about. Possibility of you saying, and in fact, you went with it. Look, I mean, the reception upside certainly, there with Hines and with what you mentioned, right? I mean, there's not a lot of competition right now, so there's certainly the upside's there, and he's going at RB 43. I guess, Tyler, we'll go to you. I mean, are you buying into this Nyheim Hines sleeper?
I think it's a good value where he's at. I think with Matt Ryan, you can go all the way back to the Devonta Freeman days. I mean, Devonta Freeman was a PPR monster, and he was splitting time in that backfield with Tevin Coleman. So he wasn't even a full-time running back there. Devonta Freeman wasn't. He had Coleman, dipping into his workload. And so even, let's say Hines is on the field for 25 to 33% of those snaps, he's still going to get enough targets to where he's going to outperform his ADP right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with it. I'll take Hines where he's at right now. I didn't realize even he was going at RB 43 right now. I mean, that's extremely low, it seems, compared to other people who are going ahead right now. I mean, Ronald Jones, Alexander Madison are guys going ahead right now. And other ones, also Ramondre Stevenson, who is an honorable mention for me, who I was going to choose as a sleeper. But what are you guys' thoughts? Would you take Hines over those guys? Zach?
I would, just because I think they're in the same category of kind of those backup running backs. But I think Hines has the most standalone value out of that group. We could see Stevenson come into a role in the Patriots offense this year, but I think as of right now, Hines has the most standalone value.
I just kind of want to throw in, I think that if you look at the 2020 stats, because I saw a lot of articles that said you can't really go off of 2021 because Wentz wasn't that guy. 2020 was Phillip Rivers, and I think that just him having 862 yards and 7 touchdowns, like let's put that into perspective. That's more than Kyle Pitts had last year. I mean, he had 1,000 yards, but he only had 1 touchdown. So he has that touchdown value. He's putting up the yards, and in the last 2 seasons when he had a good quarterback, he's been putting up numbers. So I think Matt Ryan is probably relatable to Phillip Rivers, and I think that they will both go hand in hand. I mean, I think it'll be an interesting situation. I think he'll get a lot of value.
All right, I'm with it. I'll take him where he is at right now. I'm afraid it's going to start getting pushed up more, as people start looking more into fantasy in August, because some people, let's face it, don't look at fantasy football until August, and then they're going to press on the player, and they're going to see Frank Wright said big 2022 for Nyheim Hines. So I personally think it's going to go up over time, but that could be just me here. All right, the next guy here, let's go to Chris Olave, and yes, that is my sleeper. So I'll throw some defense in here now. I'll talk about why Chris Olave. So, going with kind of what you said, Zach, right? I mean, you mentioned a lot of things, and a lot of things you said though were a lot of like what ifs. I mean, what if Alvin Kamara is suspended? I mean, or not suspended? What if he is? I mean, what if he's out 6 games? That's a guy right there. Michael Thomas. I mean, he's not necessarily that deep threat. So looking at Chris Olave, reason why I'm going with him as a sleeper here, fast wide receiver. I mean, excellent route runner. Just watching his film. I mean, he's going to be a deep threat, I feel, in the National Football League. Maybe we might not see it, this first year, but taking a rookie as a sleeper is always tough. So I got to throw in college stuff, some scouting stuff and whatnot. But looking at where he's going compared to other wide receivers right now, he is going as wide receiver at 48. I will take that value with him. And I think he's my favorite rookie redraft receiver this year for PPR. And I just think with Jameis Winston, look, he's a home run kind of quarterback. And you might say he's not that same guy he was in Tampa, but look, with Jameis Winston, I'd be looking at that. I just think, like I said, Michael Thomas, I think he'll be running the slants, and we don't know what Landry is going to give. And I think Olave is going to be that deep guy. I think he's going to give you some big plays. I obviously don't think Jamar Chase level, not going to see that kind of big play output, but I still think it's going to be a lot better than where he is at wide receiver 48. So am I crazy? Let's hear it from you guys. Zach, I'll let you fire back.
Well, I think we could definitely see him as that deep target, but I think he is going to be kind of a boomer bust type guy this year. So, like, if you're doing best ball, I think he's a great pick. At wide receiver 48, that's pretty good value. There's a lot of uncertainty right now with the Saints offense with Michael Thomas. Is he going to be back week 1? I don't think anybody really knows that for sure right now. Kamara, how long is his suspension going to be? We know he's going to come back later in the season. So there's a lot of what ifs around the Saints offense, which affect Chris Olave quite a bit. And then I think if you're looking for that home run guy, Olave could be a good option, but I think he's going to be very much so boomer bust this year.
Tyler, Jared?
Yeah, I'd agree with Zach. I think he'll outperform his ADP by a little bit. It's just I worry about his ceiling. With all the other weapons there, now that could change. Like you mentioned, if Michael Thomas comes back and he isn't his normal self, I mean, we got to realize he's barely played over the last 2 years. If Kamara does get suspended, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity for Olave to at least have a great start to the season. To me, that's just a little bit too much risk because I think he's going, 48th overall wide receiver. So I think he's probably going around round 10 in 12-team leagues. And if I'm drafting in round 10, I think I'd still be looking at somebody that I'd like to be able to plug and play in my lineup with a little bit more certainty. I know Drake London is going about 4 spots ahead of him at wide receiver 44. Burks at 45, and I just think they've got an easier path to targets. So Olave, like Zach said, it's kind of boomer bust. I think he might be inconsistent some weeks. Some weeks he might only have, 2 catches for 40 yards, and then there might be a week where he has 5 catches where he catches 3 bombs from Jameis for touchdowns. So I think there's just a little bit of inconsistency that I could see from Chris Olave this season.
Olave's going right with so wide receiver 46. He's going right now I'm seeing average 113 right now pick. So, right, I mean, puts him in around 9-10, that range. Al Nazard is going around him right now too. And then Kadarius Toney's another one. Yeah, I mean, with mine, I pointed out the inconsistency as well. So I agree with you guys on that standpoint. With mine, I took more, with my sleepers, full disclosure, I took more of a best ball approach, as you can see. With fantasy football, of course, tied into it, I'm looking at guys who I think who could outperform their ADP and in a big way. But at the same time, there's obviously a risk involved too, where they could plummet. And Olave's one. You'll hear my other, Chase Edmonds. I'll talk about it. I will defend that one too. But let's go to the next one here.
So your two were the two that we were questioning.
Yep. and I'll talk about him. Austin Hooper was the next one. I wanted to go crazy, Jared, on him. I thought you were going to go crazier too, but Austin Hooper, that is Tyler's. Tyler chose Austin Hooper. Tyler, let's hear it.
Yeah, so my big thing with Austin Hooper is the fact that Tennessee has no one to throw to. Robert Woods coming off that ACL tear. He might not be ready to start the season. Treylon Burks looks like, there's some conditioning issues. He might not be a full-time player. I think Treylon Burks could still be a very successful, solid wide receiver in the NFL, but I just don't know if he's going to be on the field enough to really be the number one target on that roster. So I think that's a huge deal with Hooper. Where he's getting drafted right now, he's getting drafted late. He's someone you could take in the last 2 rounds of your draft and, and still have solid production. I don't think he's someone you want to target as your number one tight end. Let me see. I think he's getting drafted. Let's see. Based on Yahoo's, he's getting drafted as the 25th tight end. So he's getting drafted around 205 overall. Like I said, somebody you can take in the last round if you want to take your kicker the round before that. He's definitely somebody that you can pair with a top end tight end if you get one of the top 5 and you just want a solid backup at the end, solid target. Let's face it, if you don't end up with a top 5 tight end, there's not a huge gap between tight end 8 all the way down to tight end 25. There's not a huge gap. So I'd rather put my middle round drafts into wide receivers and running backs, even quarterbacks, than take a tight end in those middle rounds. So I think Austin Hooper is just a great value where he's at. I think he's getting drafted below his floor. I think at the high end, he's probably a high end tight end 2 or even possibly low end tight end 1, depending on how targets work out in Tennessee. But I think his floor is probably mid-range to low-range tight end 2. So if you can draft somebody, at or below the floor, I think that's always good value in a fantasy football draft.
Tight end 22 right now is with where Hooper's at. He's right behind Gerald Everett and right around Logan Thomas and Cameron Brate. Cameron Brate's going to probably be dropping too with Kyle Rudolph. But yeah, Tyler, I like that pick. We were talking tight ends a few days ago, actually. Look, this guy you mentioned, and I'm all for that one as well. I love we talked about in our tight end episode, great or late is how you want to roll. And I tend to be the one who goes to the late option, but I'm with it. Jared, Zach, are you guys buying this sleeper?
Yeah, I think he nailed it. I like the defense. Like you said, Drew, great or late. I think after the first 5 or so tight ends go, you're kind of like, whatever, I don't care who I get anymore. I think he's a solid backup. He could be a starter on a fantasy team, but that's a stretch kind of. The only kind of flaws I see with this is I'm big on Treylon Burks this year. They're a rival to the Colts, I know, but I talked at our live show. I said that he's my rookie of the year. I think he's going to be. I think the system is good. And the question is his health, his conditioning, if he's able to, stay on the field. But that's one thing. And the other thing is, Ryan Tannehill. We've talked how mediocre he can be. It all comes down to, Derrick Henry's there to get the first downs. But if Ryan Tannehill can pull his own and, just carry the team as much as he can, I think that Hooper would be a good option there. It's just a lot of what ifs, just like with the Chris Olave. And I, as a fantasy owner, I don't really like what ifs and risks, but that's just me. Maybe if you're willing to take a risk, then you can, but I don't know. That's just how I see it.
Zack?
And then one thing,
Oh, Tyler, go ahead.
I was going to add one more thing because I know you brought up Ryan Tannehill, and I've seen a lot of people talking about last season and how he didn't target his tight ends, but last season he had no target to throw to a tight end. They had a lot of decent tight ends that were good run blockers, but no one that was a real threat in the receiving game. But if you look at Ryan Tannehill since he's been in Tennessee, I believe he's thrown 35% of his touchdown passes to tight ends, which I think is a huge statistic, especially when you're looking to draft a tight end too. You want to get players that are going to be red zone targets. So I think that's an area of Tannehill's game that I think if he relies on tight ends in the red zone, that's huge for Austin Hooper. And there's been plenty of reports in camp about them developing a lot of chemistry. They're the two that are on the field right now, getting those reps in. And we see how much chemistry matters when it comes to finding a connection between a QB and a wide receiver or tight end. You look at guys like Cooper Kupp, who obviously is a wide receiver, but that the time that he put in with Stafford played a huge role in the targets and everything that he got. So I think Ryan Tannehill is good for a tight end as long as they have, decent receiving ability.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar, Tyler. I was going to bring up Jonnu Smith in 2020. He got that big contract with New England after. So we've seen Tannehill support a top 10 fantasy tight end. So that's not a big worry for me. I don't think Hooper is going to be able to get back to what he was in his last year in Atlanta, but I think he's definitely going to be better than what he was in Cleveland. So I think there's going to be that happy medium. And I think, as you guys have all said, where he's going right now, that's good value. He's got some upside, and I think he has a decent floor as well.
I guess because you're looking at him then as like a tight end too then, right? I mean, that's kind of what we've mentioned is kind of where you'd want him because I don't see him sneaking into the top 12 for tight ends. But, I mean, some weeks as a streamer, you never know. So going from there, let's talk about our next sleeper. Davis Mills is our next one. And Zach, I will let you take the stand here. I'm going to give you a couple minutes for sake of time. All right, let's hear it. Davis Mills.
So Davis Mills, obviously not the best offense, not the best weapons, not the best quarterback, but he's going as quarterback 30, which I think is below where his ceiling is. It's probably at his floor, which Tyler, you mentioned before, you like to draft players at their floor or below their floor. You think that's a great strategy, which I would have to agree. So a lot of quarterbacks take that second season leap. I think he could see that. So last year he pretty much had two bad games that really hurt his average points per game. His game against Buffalo, he had no touchdowns, 4 picks. And then against the Colts, he had no touchdowns, 2 picks. But he had an average or a consistent 30 to 40 attempts a game, which gives him the opportunity to put up fantasy points, yards, touchdowns. He's not one of those quarterbacks that's throwing 20 times a game. If you look at his end to the season, so I'm looking at final 5 weeks of the season, he had a 9-2 touchdown to interception ratio, which is very good. He averaged 21.34 fantasy points per game. And then also in this offseason, they did improve the backfield a little bit. They went from Rex Burkhead. Now they have Dameon Pierce, the rookie, and they have Marlon Mack. So I think the offense will improve a little bit. They have a decent offensive line. They have some pieces. I shouldn't say decent. It's probably bottom half, but they do have some linemen that they're definitely not bottom 5 for offensive line-wise. And I think he's going to take a little bit of a leap, improve. We might see him up in the 16, 17 points per game range is what I'm predicting. So quarterback 20 around there.
And to go with that quarterback 20, Zach, look, all 4 of us are in a Dynasty Superflex League, a startup coming very soon, guys, if you think about it. August 6th is the date. Or is it? Yeah, it's August 6th. And looking at that, I mean, you need top 24 quarterback. You're starting, Zach. Bravo. I'm right with you. Love the pick. And I'm all for it. Jared, Tyler, let's hear it.
Yeah, I'm for it. Everything you said is, accurate. I think he'll have, like you said, if he's at his floor at 30, that's way too low. I think he will be above that. My only one concern would be the receiving core they have outside of Brandon Cooks. It's kind of looking rough. But you said he doesn't throw the ball much, which is true. So I guess he's a mobile quarterback, so he'll make up with that or make up for that with his mobility. But that's the only kind of concern I see.
Yeah, I'm all for it too. I think QB 30 is way too low. I think he's definitely worth a pickup as a backup quarterback for your fantasy football roster this season. As you mentioned, the receiving core is concerning. I think I liked Mills' outlook a lot more when we had the thought of Mechie coming in and playing from the slot. I thought he would have been a great addition. Obviously, it's really sad to hear with his diagnosis of leukemia. So I think that hurts Davis Mills a bit because outside of Brandon Cooks, they don't have much. They need Nico Collins to really step up this year. They've got Brevin Jordan, who's a very athletic tight end. So he's got some options. It's just a lot of uncertainty, a lot of youth still in that receiving core. The running back situation, they improved their depth. They got a little bit younger compared to last season in that running back backfield, but there's still just a lot of question marks. But I like the value for where he's going. The only reason I didn't choose him is just because when I look at QB sleepers, it's hard to say that he's ever really going to see your lineup. QB is one of the most consistent positions that as long as your quarterback's healthy and you have a top 10 quarterback, you're probably starting that person every week. So he's a great value for a backup quarterback towards the end of your draft. 100% think he's worth that pick if you want to scoop him up late as your backup QB. So I definitely agree he's going to outplay his draft position though.
Yeah, and
the offense was definitely.
Go ahead, Zach.
The offense was definitely one of the concerning things when I was looking at him as a sleeper, but I think he proved he can put up some fantasy points with that offense last year. The offense wasn't great either, so I guess I was kind of looking at that. I'm not saying he's going to be a great quarterback. Obviously, I think we all agreed on that. So I think the offense, they have enough weapons to provide him the opportunity to get to that QB 20.
Hate to, butt in here and move us on, but the time is up. Thank you, Zach, for the Davis Mills talk here. And let's go to Christian Kirk here now. Tyler, we're going to need you to take over here. Do your second sleeper.
Yeah, so Christian Kirk, I really don't think they paid him all that money to not let him get involved. Based off of Yahoo's ADP, Christian Kirk is going at a whopping 43. So he's getting drafted as a wide receiver 4 in 12-team leagues and a wide receiver 5 in 10-team leagues. That is below his floor. He's a top 10 paid wide receiver in the NFL. They don't pay receivers that kind of money if they're not going to use them. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to get a very consistent target. I don't think Christian Kirk is going to have some wide receiver 1 season. But a wide receiver floor, once again, is absolutely his floor. I think it's very realistic that he finishes at least as a wide receiver 3 and possibly even sneaks up to that wide receiver 2 range as long as he stays healthy. He's a second-round pick coming into the draft just, 4 years ago? So I think this is his fifth season in the NFL. So he's got the athletic profile. He's been consistent when he does get the opportunity. Last season, he had over 80 catches for over 1,000 yards. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a huge red zone threat, but I think he will have a little bit of consistency in PPR leagues. But once again, I just think he's a player that's getting drafted below his floor. And, I could very well see him squeezing into that wide receiver 2 range.
I love it. To talk about sleepers, there's a lot of sleepers who, Brandon Ayuk's in his range right now, ADP wise. Ramondre Stevenson was one of my honorable mention guys to choose as a sleepers right there. There's guys in that range right away that point out to sleepers. And I love you bring the money point up, right? If you're going to sign a guy and guy like even Christian Kirk, right, for all that money, in a pass heavy offense, Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence, you would expect them, to go with it. And I'm all for it. I'm, again, lower value guy. You can get him at his ADP, and who knows if that'll shoot up, because they will fluctuate more as we get closer to the season. But Jared, what do you think?
I like the pick. I think that we all agree that when we heard the price that or the amount that he got, we all said he was overpaid. But maybe that's because they see something in him that no one else does, and maybe they're going to utilize him like Tyler said. So I think if Lawrence can find his target, maybe that is Kirk. Maybe he can get up there to be a wide receiver 2 on the team. I guess that's probably his ceiling. I wouldn't think he'd go any higher than that, but yeah, I think where he is going right now, I think, yeah, it's a good sleeper pick.
I mean, not to make us all agree on every pick, but I kind of like this pick too, just because I think Trevor Lawrence was a little bit shaky in passing last year, and being a second year this year, he's going to be a little bit more comfortable. He has an extra year of experience, has an extra off season working with his coaches, his line, all that stuff. So I think he's going to be more consistent of a passer, and we can see Kirk he can benefit from that.
That's what we want to see. If you're drafting Christian Kirk, another guy for me, like, hate to bring in best ball again, but I think he's a perfect best ball guy to take too. I mean, just looking at a guy, who knows how well he could perform, and a guy who's going so low, and that's someone you potentially want on your team in those late round picks, especially in best ball, because it can be brutal sometimes if you do not come prepared. Just can be. And let's go, Jared. We're talking Devontae Parker. You did, in fact, choose him here. Currently wide receiver 58. So, wow, let's hear it.
So I looked at the New England Patriots depth chart to start, and I saw that he was listed as their number 1. Kind of back and forth with Jacoby Myers and him. I think that Jacoby Myers could be the one. They're pretty close. But yeah, like you said, wide receiver 58. His ADP is 135.3. He's going around the place of players like Tim Patrick, Alberto, and DJ Chark, and Gerald Everett. Mac Jones, still young. I think that he has a lot to prove, and I think that if he can get his passing game under him, then it'll show a lot. I think that people think that the New England Patriots are still going to be a run-heavy offense, but I did some deep, what do you want to call it, research, and not to get too wordy here, but they run a system. I don't know if you guys know it, the Earnhardt Perkins offensive system. This used to be a run-heavy offense system, but now what it is they're planning on doing this next year. They're going to have empty backfield a lot more, and they're going to spread their receivers all across the field, 3, 4, 5 of them even, and just kind of like open the field a little more. And if Mac Jones finds his target, it could be, like I said, Jacoby Myers could be his number 1 target, but it easily could be Devontae Parker. And I think if he can find that player and just kind of grow with him and get some chemistry with Parker, I think that he could really grow and be, I would say, probably a solid wide receiver 3 on a fantasy team, maybe a 2.
So my question goes, Jacoby Myers right now is wide receiver 56. Devontae Parker, wide receiver 58, or Myers at 56, you take Parker. Is there
it's like I said, it's back and forth. I think both of them could go either place. I that's what I was kind of looking at. I wanted to do Jacoby Myers, but I thought Devontae Parker was kind of the lower end, and I think they're basically the same player.
Yeah. I took Myers, I mean, in mine, but but Tyler, are you buying some Devontae Parker stock this year?
I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I think there's a real chance he could come out and be the number 1 receiver there for the Patriots. I just worry about that offense as a whole, because we don't know what that offense is going to look like. I know they're going through a system change, and they might run more wide receiver heavy sets. But with how much they invested in running backs these last 2 years in the draft and in free agency, everything like that, I have a hard time seeing that they're just going to completely flip and be this pass heavy offense. And even if they did, I still worry about Parker and his consistency and his ability to stay on the field. I mean, he had 1 solid year with the Dolphins, and outside of that, he's struggled with consistency, and he's struggled with staying on the field. So as long as he stays healthy, I think he will outperform his average draft position right now. But I don't know if I'm buying it. I think I'd rather go Jacoby Myers because he's shown a little bit more consistency and ability to stay on the field. So, and those are the type of guys the Patriots really lean towards. They lean towards those wide receivers that could be consistent. You've seen that. Doesn't matter how much they pay a wide receiver. Doesn't matter where they drafted him. Bill Belichick. I don't know why I said Parcells. Bill Belichick. He's going to go with the guy that's showing the most consistency. So I don't think it's a bad choice. But I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to jump on board for Devontae Parker just yet.
Zach, I saw your mic coming in and out. What do you want to add?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Tyler said. There's injury concerns with Parker, and then I also don't see the Patriots flipping to a pass-heavy offense. I think it's just how Bill Belichick and the Patriots organization is run. I mean, you look at Tom Brady, think about how much more he's airing out now in Tampa than he did in New England. That's Tom Brady. That's not Mac Jones. And I think with Stevenson, Damian Harris, I think that's a great backfield. You have to lean on that backfield. And I think they're going to stay with the run-heavy offense, get tight ends involved. They're going to stick to their game.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say Devontae Parker's going to outperform his ADP, sure. But and him and even Myers too, how many spots, right? I mean, they can outperform by a couple spots. And my other thing was going through. I think we're going to see some sort of, maybe we're going to see Ramondre Stevenson. Will he be the one who really outperforms his ADP? Will Jacoby Myers? I still think there's an opportunity for Parker as well, but I think there's a lot of mouths in terms of ADPs that could be outperformed. I think there's a lot of guys here, and it's just which ones will be, which ones not. Because, like you both mentioned, everyone's mentioned, quite frankly, we don't know. I mean, we don't know with this New England offense. I think this is one of the bigger question marks, and we went a little long on that one, but that one had to be. But Brandon Ayuk, let's go to that one now, and that is actually Zach's last one here. And Zach, Brandon Ayuk with the 49ers. Trey Lance's guy is Trey Lance is officially the number one, as we've heard. And let's talk about Ayuk, Zach.
My bad, I was muted.
You are muted.
So
okay.
I think a lot of people got turned off at the beginning of the season last year. He had a great rookie season. Then he came out first 7-8 weeks. He didn't produce at all fantasy-wise. People were benching him. He's probably got dropped in a few leagues. And then second half of the season, he really came back, turned it around. Didn't get quite to where he was at his rookie year level, but he drastically improved from the first 7 weeks. And there's been reports he was out in California training with Trey Lance. So they're building that chemistry. Tyler, you mentioned it before. Chemistry is very important with quarterbacks and who they're throwing to. Not to read too much into it, but Debo was not in California, I heard. So just putting that out there. Over the last 11 weeks of 2021, so last 11 weeks, he averaged over 13 points per game, which is great improvement over 3 or 4 years averaging in the first couple weeks. And then also last 11 weeks, he had 6 or more targets in 9 of the 11 weeks. So we like targets. Targets lead to catches, and everyone knows that, right? And then after week 8, he was also on the field for 92.3% of plays, whereas the first 7 weeks, it was around the 65%. So you saw uptick in playing time. He also saw uptick in target share over the last 8 weeks, 24% target share. And he is a wide receiver, 14 overall after week 8. So where he's going at wide receiver 40, I think that's great value. He's going around the same area as some of the other guys that we talked about already, Chris Olave. I would take him over all those guys that we've talked about already.
Okay. With Brandon Ayuk, by the way, Zach, that 20 seconds of you muted does count against your time here. Sorry. That's how we operate. But look, with Ayuk, my concern again is it's Trey Lance. I mean, we saw even with George Kittle, I know small sample size, but those 2 games that Kittle played with Trey Lance were not great. And, I know you mentioned that they were working it out, but I just, in a season in football, I don't know. There's a lot of questions I feel with that, but of course, when you're with that in that area of guys, I mean, there's always a lot of questions with those guys. I mean, there's a reason they're there. So if there's a matter of, you like Brandon Ayuk more than a guy like Chris Olave or others, of course, that's a preference there. And looking at Ayuk, certainly, I mean, the target share, like you mentioned, it's going to be there in 2022 to 2023. And you can't argue with that. And that's something you're going to be looking for. So at that point, I mean, I'm with it. I think he'll outperform where he's at right now. And I mean, with that, Tyler, you agree with that?
I'm not so sure. I think he's getting drafted right around where he should. I'm on board with you about Trey Lance. And it's not that I don't think Trey Lance is going to be a good quarterback. I just worry about the passing volume in that offense. In one of his 2 starts last season, he was either 17 or 19 carries as a quarterback. His other start, I believe he had 9 carries. So it's kind of that Lamar Jackson type effect of if he's running the ball a lot, they're not throwing the ball as much. I think Brandon Ayuk could be very efficient with his opportunities as long as he gets them. But I don't know if I see a lot of upside in Brandon Ayuk. I do like his value where he's at right now. I just don't think he's going to necessarily dramatically outperform his current ADP.
I mean, I kind of agree with everything you said. I think that my another concern that Zach kind of lightly brushed on is with Deebo Samuel. If he is on the team still, obviously his value is going to go down. Ayuk is, but I think that Ayuk is going around where he should. He has a lot of talent, a high ceiling. I think he could outperform, but like Tyler said, I don't think that he goes any higher. You said he's at 40. I think he could finish at maybe like a 35, but I don't know if I would feel comfortable going any higher than that.
Zach, I mean, anything you want to add with that, or you confident Trey Lance?
I think those are all fair arguments. I just think Trey Lance is going to be able to push the ball downfield more. I think he is going to be pretty efficient with his receptions and targets, like Tyler said he might happen, but that's, I guess, what I'm looking at.
I think it's just a big risk too with Lance, like you guys said. It's a lot of what ifs and what will happen
with all these guys. That's what makes them sleepers. So credit everyone for defending them. And look, I might need a lot of time here. There's a lot of convincing. So, maybe I just had 10 minutes to the clock here, but Chase Edmonds here is my pick. And you might be looking at me like I have 3 heads, right? There's 4 running backs in the system, and it's going to be an overall, who knows, right? Mike McDaniel comes in and you might be like, how is he a sleeper? Well, let me tell you why. So I deserve some points here for being brave to take this one. Chase Edmonds, look, he was in, right? I mean, he was in the same division as Mike McDaniel last year. Goes out. I mean, he plays as a fiddle to James Conner, and James Conner had a big year, we know, with touchdowns, but the receptions, I mean, that was Chase Edmonds' story. I mean, I'll call him a better version of Nyheim Hines because that's what I think we'll see. And with it, I mean, seeing him that much, Edmonds, he gets a 2-year $12.6 million deal then with the Miami Dolphins, and Mike McDaniel was with them too. So it seems like, you go out and pay a guy some money. I mean, I know Tyler mentioned with Kirk, again, it's different in terms of the volume and how much, but a 2-year contract here to guy Chase Edmonds. He saw him. I mean, there had to have been some influence there, and they're, with him. I mean, he had to have seen something in order to make that signing. And I just, 903 total yards. Last year, he's been on an uptick throughout his career. And I always like to highlight stuff that the fantasy football community puts out. And CJ of the Roto Street Journal points out some great things here I got to mention. So the 49ers running game, it has, and that's where Mike McDaniel's coming from, right? I hate bringing that up. They have had, for running backs, 499 carries and over 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns. That was in 2021. And then in other years, around the 2,000-yard range is what you'll see. And, I mean, you can expect, right? I mean, right now, and I hate to, rely on reports too, reports come out that they say he's the lead man right now and out of camp. And, how much can you buy into that is the other thing. But, if he's the lead guy, I mean, the games without James Conner last year's 2 games, he averaged 19.95 PPR points a game, and a 26.7 was the high there to bring that up too. And, he's put together some great stats as well. 850 total yards while averaging 5.7 yards per carry. So I just think Chase Edmonds is a great fit there with the Dolphins. And I know there could be a lot of mouths to feed there, but I think Edmonds might stand out as that one guy. And where I just think with the 4 guys being there, that's kind of decreased his value to some extent. I'm willing to take that, but it's not a lot of, it could be hit or miss there. I'll admit it. And that's kind of where I'm standing with that. Look, have at it. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think I said it at the beginning. It's just, like you said, a lot of mouths to feed. You got Mostert, you got Michelle, Gaskin, and Edmonds. I think Edmonds will be number 1, like you said. I think he will stand out. But it's really risky. So if you want to take that big risk, I mean, go ahead. That's all on you. He's on my dynasty team, sitting on the bench right now. I think I'm going to wait a few weeks to see what his value is, and then I'll look to either trade him or somehow start him, because I do
have a suitor.
I do. Yeah. I do have Josh Jacobs and, Miles Sanders. I don't really like them, but I think that he could be a solid player, but I think you have to wait a few weeks into the season to see where he's actually going to be, or not. Maybe even just training camp, see what comes out of that, and see where his value will be there.
Anyone? Have at it.
I kind of like it. I think he is going to lead the backfield. I can see him getting 15 touches a game mixed between rush attempts and catches. So PPR, obviously that adds some value. We know he's going to catch the ball. He's done it his whole career. And I think he's going to be the best fantasy running back out of that backfield. We could see some little dump offs from Tua. I don't think he's going to be workhorse back by any means. I don't think he might be 50% of the touches out of that backfield, maybe a little bit more, the 50 to 70 range, somewhere in there. But I think he's going to be able to perform to his ADP.
So I will say that I definitely like your Chase Edmonds pick a lot more than the Chris Olave pick. That is what I'll say.
Really?
I do. I just don't necessarily know the ceiling's there for Olave, but with Chase Edmonds, I do see the ceiling. I do see the potential. If he's able to come away with that number one role and actually, get rolling. You look at Elijah Mitchell last year, right? It's kind of a crowded backfield going into the season, and he did come away and have a solid RB2 type of season. So I could see Chase Edmonds reaching that. You look at just the athletic profile, and he's a far more explosive player than Sony Michel. Sony Michel, I can't even tell you the last season he's averaged 4 yards per carry. He's a far more explosive player than Myles Gaskins. Mostert has struggled to stay on the field. He's 31 years old. He's had injury issues for the past 4 to 5 years now. So you could definitely see the path there for him to take over that role. Second thing is, he might have some competition with Myles Gaskins, just as far as the receiving role, but he's a very good receiving back out of the backfield. So I think he definitely gets a little bit more playing time on third downs in comparison to Sony Michel and Mostert. So I don't mind that pick. Like I said, I like that choice of yours over the Olave choice, but there's just a lot of unknowns in that offense right now.
Yeah, and going back to Olave still, just if you take a rookie, right, as a sleeper, I knew there was gonna be questions, right, coming on a show talking about it, because look, I mean, it's a rookie, you don't know. I mean, it's hard to predict a ceiling, and is it even possible to predict the ceiling of a rookie receiver? And with that, Jared or Zach, were you guys gonna butt in and say something?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really say anything about Olave, but I mean, that's kind of the reason I didn't, just because he is a rookie. And I think that I don't really have an opinion where I can stand by and prove with facts, because it's like you have to go off his college stats and stuff. And I don't really like making an argument about that, but yeah, I'm going to give you credit for choosing Edmonds. It's a risky one. I think that if you, like I said, if you're willing to take that risk, I mean, go ahead. It's not something I would do, but I mean, that's basically all I got for him. I think he's just his ceiling is high, but you just got to see what he's off to at the start of the season.
And one other thing I'll add is you also have to consider your drafting strategy. I mean, if you go a bunch of running backs early, then you might not need to chase Edmonds, but the dead zone for running backs is real. You look at rounds, 5 to 8 every single year. There's not a lot of success for running backs in rounds, even 4 to 8. There's not a lot of success for running backs. So if you are one of those people that wants to draft, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end heavy at the beginning of drafts, he is a solid choice. If you do want to avoid the running back dead zone and take a running back later, I think he's definitely got a lot more upside than some of the guys going around him. You look at like Michael Carter, I think Breece Hall takes most of the work there. You got Stevenson in New England who's sharing the backfield with a bunch of other running backs. So based on his value of the other running backs going around him, I don't think he's a bad choice if you do decide to go running backs later on in the draft.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear. Zach, is there something you want to add here before we wrap up?
No, I guess they pretty much hit it all where he's going. He's got some value.
He does indeed. And yeah, to wrap up here, as of when we're recording, we still have one spot left for a $20 PPR fantasy league. Tyler, if you want to take that spot right now on the show, consider it sold.
I'm in so many leagues the way it is. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, so that spot is still up for grabs. If you want to reach out on our social at Drew Sports Crew, and that's for Instagram and Twitter, and then Facebook and YouTube is Drew Sports Crew. We have a TikTok now. Keep that in mind. We post some great stuff on there. Jared was unfortunately the victim the first time around, but hey, go check it out. Drew Sports Crew. Jared was a good sport about it, so go check it out. Other things to mention, guys. We have a live show coming up Friday, August 12th at Pet Skull Brewing in Manitowoc. We'll be talking fantasy football, and we're going to be doing a Packer preview as well. We'll be answering all of your fantasy football questions. So if you come in and ask, how good is Nyheim Hines? Jared will tell you exactly what he said here with that. And then please bring up Jet stuff at the show just for Zach. Right, Zach? You're going to have to hear the 9-8 stuff. So...
Do you still believe in that, Zach? Just a side note.
Maybe not 9-8, but I think they got 7-8 wins in them.
Oh, yeah, Tyler,
I backed off a little bit.
Tyler, you've heard this, right?
Down.
Zach predicts the Jets go 9-8 next year.
Ooh, that's tough. Division they're in, that's a hot take.
We love to tell our guests that.
Hey, they've got a young squad. You never know. If any team is going to pull a Bengals type of year, it could be the Jets. A young QB, a lot of receiving options around him. Defense has some pieces. I don't know if I'd go 9-8. I think that's a little risky choice, but I don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as they were last year.
No, but I do. Every person I see that posts on the Jets has them at like 4 or 5 wins, and then there's just Zach at 9-8. So I just think
the reactions people give us when we inform them Zach said 9-8 on the show, it is something. I mean, it is like, I don't even know. It is just something I've never seen before. That's the main hot take we really have on the show. Otherwise, Zach just being a Justin Herbert stan, which I get behind as well. So that's the other thing. I didn't mention the nickname for Jameis when I mentioned him. It's Famous Jameis. Keep that in mind. That's also coined by Journey to a Million. But yeah, I guess that'll probably wrap it up here for Tyler, Zach, Jared, and myself, Drew Skyberg. So thank you all for listening to yet another episode of Drew's Sports Crew, the Journey to a Million, the perfect podcast for you.